My fellow bassists, have you ever watched a really great slap bass player and thought, I can play that bass line, but it just doesn't sound as good when I play it? You might be playing all of the right notes and rhythms, and your timing might even be great, but your slap bass lines just aren't punchy and clear sounding. If this is you, then you probably haven't mastered the art of muting. In today's lesson, I'm going to explain why muting is so crucial in slap bass lines. I'm going to show you 4 different methods of muting, and I'm going to give you an exercise that will allow you to practice and master each of these 4 methods. But first, let's take a look at someone who's an absolute master of slap bass muting. So as you can hear, Marcus Miller has incredible control over the lengths of each note, and he also uses a lot of ghost notes. Both of those things make the bass line sound way more funky and rhythmic, and none of it would be possible without muting. And just to really emphasize how important muting is in slap bass, I'm going to play that same bass line for you once without muting, and then again with muting, and you can decide for yourself which is funkier. Alright, so hopefully now I've convinced you that muting is very important in slap bass. It's time to show you how to actually do it. One of the simplest ways to mute when you're slapping is to use this meaty part of your thumb and just rest it on the string you just played in order to dampen it, like this. The great thing about this method is it puts you in a really good position to pop, which is very common after you've just muted a slap, like this. Try playing this pattern along with me and make sure to use this meaty part of your hand to mute the notes on beats 2 and 4. Okay, great, so that's one of the muting methods. Let's check out the second one now. You're just going to take all of the fingers on your left hand and rest them over all the strings on your bass, and then when you slap and pop, they come out as ghost notes. So now we're going to add some ghost notes to that phrase that we played earlier using this muting technique. So the first bar of the new phrase sounds like this. So the rest of the phrase is very similar, but with some slight variations at the end of each bar. Try playing the whole thing along with me, and remember, if you don't get it perfect the first time through, don't worry, just go back and try it again, and make sure to use that muting technique where you rest all of your left-hand fingers across all the strings every time you see ghost notes which are marked as X's. Alright, so we've just got 2 more techniques to go before we put this all together. By the way, the best way to clean up your slap sound is to build these techniques into your muscle memory so it just becomes your default way of playing. And the best way to do that is to practice them all in one exercise along with a backing track, and that's exactly what you can do if you sign up for the Gold member free trial of Basecamp, which you can find in the description. Alright, so method number 3 is something that I like to call a lifted mute. This is essentially where you lift your fretting finger up so that the note stops, but you don't lift it off the string completely, so it's still resting on the string, and therefore the note is muted. If you lift off of the string completely, it sounds like this. So as you can hear, you end up hearing the open string note, and you really don't want that because it stops you from getting that punchy and clear sound that is so important in slap bass. You also want to make sure you're not accidentally performing a pull-off with your fretting finger. A lot of beginner bassists end up playing something that sounds a bit like this. Whereas it should actually sound like this. Anyway, here's a phrase that'll teach you how to use lifted mutes in a bass line. Every time you hear me playing short notes, I'm just lifting my finger off the fret, but not completely off the string so that it mutes the notes. This is a great muting method if you need to play some lines that have quite a bit of left-hand movement, but not many pops. I made an 8-bar phrase that uses that riff with some variations, so let's try playing the whole thing together now, and remember to use lifted mutes to keep those short notes short. Okay, great. There's just one more method of muting before we get to the final bass line, and that's the left-hand thumb mute. I don't use this one that much because my hands are not that big, and it's definitely one that's easier if you have bigger hands, but it's still a good one to know. Basically, you take your left thumb and you wrap it around the neck of the bass like this, and then you can use it to mute the E string while still keeping the other fingers on your left hand pretty free. You might have noticed in that clip of Marcus Miller that I showed you, he uses this muting technique quite extensively. Here's a little phrase I wrote that helps you practice this muting method. So as you can see, every time I played an open A string, I made sure to mute the open E string because otherwise they both ring out at the same time and it ends up sounding muddy and unclear like this. Try playing the whole phrase along with me now, making sure to use your left thumb to mute the E string when you play the open A string. One word of caution with that technique, make sure that you don't accidentally push down too much with your thumb, because then you'll end up tapping some notes when you don't want to, like this. Okay, so I've taught you 4 different methods of muting and 4 phrases that will help you practice them. The final challenge is to put all of these phrases together into one super convenient bass line. I'm going to play the whole thing now. Let's see if you can play along with me. And as always, don't worry if you don't get it perfect the first time. You can always just keep going back and keep trying until you get it right. Let's do this. Congrats on making it this far, that's really awesome. If you feel like you've learned something from this lesson, but you want to clean up your slap skills as fast as possible, you should practice that exercise at a wide variety of tempos and download the backing tracks and tab for it, which you can do at the Basecamp Patreon. That'll also give you instant access to 10 other slap bass lessons, as well as hundreds of videos and exercises covering everything ranging from music theory to ear training and everything else you need to know to improve quickly. Just click the link in the description to join over 4,000 fellow bassists on this journey. The 4 methods I've taught you today are not the only ways of muting. You can mute your bass with literally any part of your hand, but hopefully those 4 methods that I showed you will get you covered in most situations. And remember, the more accurate you are with your slaps, the less unnecessary muting you'll need for cleanup. Thank you so much for coming here and practicing with me. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next lesson.